So with every new season of Diablo 4, one of the most important things is to go find the best new spots to be able to farm a ridiculous amount of gear, whether it be higher quality gear, so gear that has a higher chance to drop as ancestral with greater affixes, or just finding spots that give you a sheer quantity of gear drops to look for that greater affix gear to just take your build to the next level and take them into Torment 4. And in Season 10 of Diablo 4, there is one spot that is seeming to be better than pretty much all of the others for just a sheer amount of gear drops. And this is going to be utilizing the new Season 10 seasonal mechanic called Chaos Rifts. Now, Chaos Rifts are just these objects you go click on that'll spawn a portal with a bunch of enemies, usually some elites and a bunch of other of the new chaos enemies. You defeat them, destroy the portal, and you'll get some reward. And there are all the different rarities of these portals, and they can give basically any reward you could expect throughout the game. You can get pretty much any resource out of them. You can get bonus experience, you can get seasonal rep, you could get different gear drops, you could get specific unique gear drops, you could even find a super rare mythic portal that will give you a guaranteed piece of a mythic gear. So at a baseline, you can just get basically everything throughout the game from these portals, but there's multiple areas you can go farm portals, and only one of them is really going to be dropping a ridiculous amount of gear. So you can find these Chaos Rifts in either Hell Tides or in Nightmare Dungeons, and you can only find them in Nightmare Dungeons with a key that has the Chaos Rift affix on it. Now, we are not going to be doing this in Hell Tides. Hell Tide Chaos Rift farming is actually good for some other things, but not specifically for gear. So for this farm, you're going to be wanting to get as many Nightmare Dungeon sigils with the Chaos Rift aspect on them, because this is where you're going to be farming a ridiculous amount of gear. Now, you can do this farm before you hit Torment 1, but you're not going to be getting the gear drops like you do in this video. This is specifically when talking about Torment 1 and up, because once you get into Torment 1 and go do a Chaos Rift Nightmare Dungeon sigil, every single Chaos Rift you close will give you like 3+ pieces of gear. And just from my small amount of testing, so this isn't necessarily true, we will need more data and more testing to actually see if this is true, but just based upon my personal experience, it seems that not only do these pieces of gear that you just get for closing any of these Chaos Rifts seem to have a higher chance to be greater affix, but it also seems to give you a higher chance to give you just random uniques compared to just doing normal content throughout the game, obviously besides ladder bosses. Now, once you go run a Nightmare Dungeon with the Chaos Rift aspect, there will be 5 Chaos Rifts in every Nightmare Dungeon. Maybe some of them will have some varying amount, but every one I've done so far has had 5. And what's super nice is you can just scroll out a little bit when you're in the dungeon, and you'll be able to see every Chaos Rift on your map even before you've got into that area and removed the Fog of War. So you know generally where they are, but I would still usually recommend you complete the whole dungeon, even though you may be able to get all the Chaos Rifts without completing it, just because completing a Nightmare Dungeon gives you 1 guaranteed Nightmare Sigil, and it seems Nightmare Dungeons have been buffed, or specifically the end loot you get after defeating the boss, because it seems like you're getting a handful of legendaries just for completing the Nightmare Dungeon itself as well. So that will give you a few more legendaries or potential uniques on top of everything else you're getting from the Chaos Rifts. So it seems that the best way to farm just pure amounts of gear in this season is legitimately going to be to get a really fast moving build and just run Nightmare Dungeons with Nightmare Dungeon sigils, because this is just seeming to give you the most amount of gear possible. Even if the Chaos Rift you're closing doesn't have a reward of gear specifically, every single one just drops you a handful of legendaries or uniques, and then on top of that, you can also get Chaos Rifts that just give you guaranteed uniques, or potentially, if you're super lucky, even give you a guaranteed mythic. And on that note, I don't know how rare the mythic Chaos Rifts actually are. The only reason we know they even exist right now is because in one of the trailers they showed one in a Hell Tide, but while you're doing this farm, you just have probably some small chance to get a mythic Chaos Rift that'll just give you a free mythic. So while you're doing this gear farm, more for legendaries and a little bit less for uniques, you'd also just have a really small chance to get a guaranteed mythic. And also keep in mind, like the previous season season with strong rooms, Chaos Rifts seem to be the most common affix you can get on Nightmare Sigils, so you shouldn't run out of these super quickly unless you're absolutely blitzing through all of them and you're running out of either keys or the dust to craft more keys. But in general, you shouldn't really have an issue just constantly having Nightmare Sigils with this affix on them, so you should be able to just indefinitely farm these pretty easily. But that's pretty much all you're going to be doing for this farm. I really haven't seen another area that gives this amount of loot this quickly, because it's also just incredibly easy. Nightmare dungeons are still kind of easy compared to, say, pushing pits or doing ladder bosses in terms of difficulty, so you should be able to farm these pretty quickly without much difficulty and farm up a ridiculous amount of loot to push into the highest tiers of difficulty. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.